Hello, everybody. I'm Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am brought to you in part by WBFR Block 50 Radio, which is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take your device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, wherever you're listening. I am there. I'm sure you all woke up to the news this morning that Russell Wilson has signed with a one-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to be getting into that today. We're going to be talking NBA. We've got plenty on tap with women's college basketball. A couple of fights last night broke out. We've got that on the menu today. Regardless, South Carolina is your SEC women's champion. Mac Jones got traded to the Jags. Chris Jones signs a 5-year extension. Baker Mayfield signs an extension with Tampa Bay. A lot of signings, a lot of trades. A lot of everything going on yesterday in the NFL. And we're going to be talking about fake quotes. Fake quotes that you are probably seeing from Caleb Williams that are just simply not true. They're out there, they're looming, they're hanging around. They're just not true. Well, Russell Wilson supposedly met with a couple of teams over the weekend. One of them being the Pittsburgh Steelers, who reportedly he spent 6 hours hanging out with. He also met with the New York Football Giants. For those who don't know, nobody is going to have to take on that salary cap to sign him. Regardless of whatever was going to happen, nobody was going to have to take on the $39 million. Literally, you save money by picking up Russ because you sign him to the league minimum, which is $1.12 million, and the Denver Broncos pick up the remaining tab at $37.8. Now, are the Broncos foolish for being willing to pick up the tab, basically pay him to play somewhere else? I mean, that's the main thing, right? This is one of those you can look at it and you could say, look, Russ has fell off. He was never really that guy. He got carried by a defense in Seattle. He had a couple of really good wide receivers that make him look better than he was. The offensive line wasn't as bad as people suggest. Russ holds on to the football too long. He carried that on over to Denver. He got exposed for who he really is. That defense was amazing the first year he was there. You could spin it like that. I'd somewhat accept that argument. You could also say that in his last couple of seasons there, yeah, sure, he had Metcalf and those guys. All right. Well, if you don't have time to get him the damn football, what are you supposed to do? Don't forget that when they got rid of Russ and they traded him to Denver, that they also acquired 2 offensive linemen in the offseason and drafted another. So they greatly improved the offensive line. And by the way, what has Geno Smith done since he's been there? Well, Geno's not that good. Well, they chose to start him over Russ because they acquired him. They got Drew Lock. They weren't going to start him. So they felt that Geno Smith technically was the best that the NFL had to offer. I just want that to sink in. And Geno has done nothing. Let's also not forget that there were questions about whether or not Russell Wilson could be coached, somebody of his caliber, by Pete Carroll. Because Pete Carroll had not been successful in the NFL before. He was never really that successful when he was at college. It really wasn't until he got to USC that he finally did what he did with Reggie Bush and all those guys. And there were people questioning whether or not he knew how to coach an $800 million quarterback. Do not forget that when Russell Wilson and company won that first Super Bowl, Russ was making the then league minimum $850K, right? That's what he was making. Philip Whitehurst, who was the other quarterback on that football team, was making more money than him. Russ had earned the starting job over Philip Whitehurst. And then Russell eventually took a big payday, and people started to wonder, is this on Pete Carroll or is this on Russ? His last season there, they did not start out very good. They ended the season really well, but they didn't start out good for nothing. He goes to Denver. He's got a really good defense, but he doesn't really have the world's best offense. People go, well, Courtland Sutton's a really good wide receiver. Is he, though? Is he? Okay, fine, Cortland Sutton will make some really dramatic catches, but he's also going to fumble the football. Let's not forget that the first year that Denver was there, through the first 7 weeks of the season, that offense was number 1 in offensive penalty yards for holding. They were number 1 in false starts. They were number 1 in drop passes. They were number 1 in fumbles after the catch. Last year, that offensive receiving core was again tops in the NFL in fumbles after the catch. They were 12th most in penalty yards on first down. That includes offsides and holding penalties. I've literally eyewitness plays where he would be in shotgun, and before the ball even got there, Russ had enough time to literally secure it and get down because there's a man in his face. What is he supposed to do? He only had 8 interceptions all season last year. To put that in perspective, Brock Purdy had 9 picks in 4 games. In fact, Brock Purdy had 10 turnovers in 4 games alone. Joe Flacco, comeback player of the year, he had 8 interceptions in the short amount of time that he was with Cleveland. And then you look at the playoffs, how many times did he turn the ball over there? He's had how many different head coaches over the last few years? How many different offensive coordinators? How many different styles? How many times has he been asked to change everything up? And for whatever reason, even though Vance Joseph failed with Denver before, they still brought him on as a defensive coordinator again this year, and Denver's defense was horrendous. They were horrible. They were 30th overall in the NFL. They were 29th against the pass. They were 24th against the run. They were 27th in most points given up per game. They were an awful defense. They dropped 70 to Miami, and people want to act like this is 100% Russell Wilson's fault, what was going on in Denver. And then, on top of all of that, they threatened to bench him while Coach Payton is yelling at him in the sideline. You know that they were doing this, trying to make him look bad. Coach Payton admitted that this was a bad coaching move by him. The Broncos tried to save face and tried to say that Coach Payton had nothing to do with it. Then he outed himself. They were threatening to bench him because they didn't want to restructure his contract, and this is why. He knew what they were going to do, and he still got his duckies. And for all the people, including myself, that said Russell Wilson was soft, do you think he's soft now? Because he's not even going to be in Denver, and he's still going to get $37 million from him. Then he's going to get another $1.21 million to go to Pittsburgh to a basically already made football team. You got Pickens, Harris, a pretty solid offensive line, a defense that is really sharp. You've got head coach Mike Tomlin over there. Arthur Smith is pretty good as an offensive coordinator. Not as a head coach, but as an OC, he's not bad. And you've got an already made run game for Arthur Smith over there who loves to run the football. Go ask Bijan Robinson about that. You might as well say, forget about it. We're talking AFC Championship game minimum. Now, it's probably going to go through Kansas City. I don't know. We're going to be talking about them here in a little bit because we're going to see what they're going to do with Snead. They already franchise tagged him, but then they went off and they gave the 5-year deal to Chris Jones, so we'll see how that all pans out. But to me, the bottom line here is you can look at it and say, well, Russ is washed and Denver thinks he's so bad that they're paying him to go somewhere else. Or you can look at it as Denver had no clue what they were doing. Peyton never really wanted Russ to begin with. They did everything he could to flush him out. The Broncos have been getting rid of this person. They've been getting rid of that person, right? Judy's not going to be there anymore. Sutton stopped following on social media. So that tells me he wants out the door. The Broncos are gutting a football team that was bad to begin with, but let's not pretend that Sean Payton added any value to the Denver Broncos. I was excited when he first got there. Now, to me, it's just another Josh McDaniels situation, and we are stuck with him. And why you would choose Peyton over Russ is beyond me, but the Broncos are about to learn some very hard lessons because this offseason is going to suck for the Denver Broncos. And whoever they draft, believe me when I tell you, they are going to be leery about whether or not Denver's going to try and screw them over too. This is why Russell wanted the guaranteed money that he did. I don't think he really trusted the Broncos organization. And from the looks of it, he had every reason not to trust him. This ended up working out for Russ. He's still got a lot left in the tank. If anybody watched Denver football, people who say, well, he doesn't have the wheels like he used to, I guess you weren't watching Russell Wilson run the option play then. We're talking a straight-up collegiate style of option play. Russ still has the wheels. So the Denver Broncos screwed themselves in the market. Who knows what they're going to be able to do in the draft? Jane Daniels is out there. There were rumors that he was going to sign with the Giants, Russell Wilson, who had the 6th-round draft pick. That's not going to happen. So now there's probably no trade value there, so they probably stay at number 6. Pittsburgh's not going to need to get Jane Daniels now. You've got Russell Wilson, unless you want to pick him up and see what you can do to trade up in the draft, but I think you'd have to give up too much. So to me, the way the team is set right now with Russell Wilson, even though it's a 1-year deal, you're probably giving yourself in reality about 3 years. Because you can literally do a 1-year deal and then a 1-year deal, have the Denver Broncos pick up the tab on you, and then sign him later on to like a 2 or 3 year deal if he wants to continue to play football at the end of his career. Then at that point, you could draft a quarterback. I think he's going to be better than Ben Roethlisberger. Remember Roethlisberger, it's not my job. It's not my job to make sure, blah, blah, blah. It's not my job. Meanwhile, Ben Roethlisberger's running around on his podcast. Nobody's got accountability. When he admitted that Jerome Bettis was the leading force when they won that Super Bowl. He was the guy that stepped up and was the vocal leader on that football team, not Ben. So I side with Russ on this. I think Denver completely screwed him over. He traded one poor offensive line for another. They never did anything to help him out. Danny Dimes probably doesn't have to worry about his job now with the Giants unless they do decide to trade up to try and get Jane Daniels. But be that as it may, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have trade value now. So with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, $115 million could be earned. What was it, like $30 million this year, next year, and then $40 million on the back end? He's got $5 million in incentives that he can get up to. You got Chris Godwin over there. You got Mike Evans over there. They're not eating up a lot, but the crazy thing was that going into this, Tampa Bay only had $14 million left over in the salary cap. So how this is going to hit, I don't know, but it looks to me like they're over. Plus, you got the NFL draft coming up. And by the way, per the CBA, when you go over, you hit $5 million on potential fines is what you could pay up to. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are really kind of putting themselves in a jam right here. You know, when this all came out with Evans being a free agent, there were a lot of people who thought he was going to go to Kansas City. My thing was, what if he likes playing with Baker Mayfield? What if he actually likes playing with Baker Mayfield? And when he signed the 2-year deal, I thought he wants to stay with Baker. I think he wants to see what happens with Baker Mayfield as his QB. And then here we are, not too long afterwards, Baker signs on the dotted line. You know, look, last year their offensive line ranked pretty good, but I think that we all saw the offensive line play the way that they did in the playoffs when they met some real competition. Look, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they were an up-and-down football team a season ago. You know, they started off pretty good, then they dropped off. A lot of people were riding Baker's jock, talking about how well that he was playing. I really didn't see it, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. In the red zone, him and Mike Evans were pretty much unstoppable, but outside of that, it was hit and miss. And it was really predicated upon the offensive line. Let's not forget that Jensen, their center, was out because of 2022. He got hurt. So then he basically missed all of last year. You know, he chose to do holistic health. He didn't do any surgery or anything like that. Everybody keeps talking about Aaron Rodgers and what he's doing. He was not the first. Jensen was doing this before he was. It's just that Aaron Rodgers is with Pat McAfee all the time. And he's such an egomaniac that he gets to act like he's a genius. But regardless of that, his last game there was the playoffs this past season. Now he's probably going to be healthy for a full season, so hopefully that could change some things. But They've got, what, 3 linemen that are unrestricted free agents, and then they got another lineman that's a restricted free agent. I mean, that's going to, and you just give Baker all this money, so the depth chart's going to be pretty thin when it comes to line. I mean, you want to talk about high risk, high reward? That is exactly what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing. High risk, high reward. Not really sure that this is one of those trust the process moves by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, they snuck into the playoffs last year because they were in a bad division. Let's not forget that up until, I think, week 14, week 15, Carolina could have conceivably made the playoffs just because all they had to do was win out the division. I get it. Easier said than done, but still. Carolina at that point was a one-win football team. That's really atrocious to think about, which, again, is why the NFL needs to change the playoff system. But regardless of that, what I am telling you is they got in because they were in a very bad division. And I don't think anybody believes otherwise, and I don't think that you should. Look, I get it that a lot of people are rooting for Baker. They feel like Cleveland screwed him over. Let's be honest, though, a big part of that has to do with what happened with Deshaun Watson. Had none of that news never come out about Deshaun and he just would have been hurt, I think everybody would have been, well, maybe he finessed him a little bit, but an injury is an injury. What are you going to do? Because a lot of people thought that Deshaun Watson was faking that shoulder injury. Now, come to find out, he's got to have surgery on it, right? So I think that with the outside news of Deshaun Watson, people think that Baker got screwed over. Let's not forget that when he left out of Cleveland, he was pretty much top 5 in just about every passing category that you could think of. Took him to the AFC Championship game, a game that they probably should have won, woulda, coulda, shoulda. You could talk about that play at the end of the half all you want to. That's been so long ago now. He was not successful when he went to Carolina, but then again, who is? He goes to the Rams, has that long 98-yard drive to win that football game. Everybody's like, okay, this is a way for the Rams to be able to shop Baker around now, basically. You get to Tampa Bay, you get to the playoffs, you get a win over Philly, but, I said this season, what does that win really even mean for the Bucs? I mean, when it really boils down to it, what does that win even really truly mean for Tampa Bay? The way that the season ended for the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, come on, man. And now you've got defensive ends out of there, no more, Swift at running back. Jalen Hurts is going to be on an island. That offensive line is mid, to say the least. Yeah, I'm telling you right now, I don't know what to really think of this move. I think Baker, you could say, is getting his due, but I'll tell you this much. They're going to have a really good season this year. Baker has been playing hurt. He's one tough SOB. He's been basically playing hurt almost every year that he's been in the NFL. Almost every season, he's got an off-season surgery that he's got to have done. We've seen him play with the shoulder the way that he had when he did in Cleveland. Last year, he was hobbling around really bad after football games. That last playoff game against Detroit, man alive, Brody was running for his life. I mean, don't get me wrong, he made some throws, but, the kind of money that he just got, you really don't have money for an offensive lineman. 3 unrestricted free agents on the line. Your defense is pretty much middle of the road. It's probably good enough to sustain you, but I don't know that it gets you through the playoffs. This is a football team that literally is going to have to stay 100% healthy. And as we know during the season, it's just not going to happen. I think Tampa Bay is probably not going to be much better than they were a season ago, if I'm being honest with you. I think giving Baker that kind of money set you up for failure at other positions where you really need to be able to spend some money. Mac Jones has been traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 6th-round pick, which who knew that he had 6th-round pick value? The Pats come away with the 3rd pick in the NFL draft still, by the way. So Jaden Daniels is out there. At least he may be out there. Everybody's high on Drake May. I don't think he's going to get it done. You got Michael Penix Jr. that's out there I think is better. Caleb Williams, we'll see. I mean, obviously the Chicago Bears, right? So yeah, there's just a lot here. There really is just a lot. And look, here's going to be the main thing when all is said and done. This is, and I mean this, there is a huge mess to clean up with the New England Patriots. It's almost as if Bill Belichick got to a place where he just did not even care. Or then again, you could also say it was revealed just how bad he was. Look, this is a bad situation that Jared Mayo is stepping into as the new head coach for the New England Patriots. You know, Jim Rome used to say, you don't want to be the guy who follows the guy. You want to be the guy who followed the guy. This is part of the reason why, because the guy who follows the guy may have to clean up a mess. He's got to follow legendary status. Now, it's not necessarily that way, though, with Bill Belichick, is it? Because the way that it looks, Brady carried him. Brady saved his job. Brady saved McDaniel's job, probably some defensive coordinators. He definitely saved Bruce Arians' job in Tampa Bay. It's all going to be about what he's looking for as a coach, right? So you're at the number 3 pick. The Giants are at number 6. They're not meeting with Russ. So now they're going to need to trade up. What are you willing to give away so that way you can either get a quarterback or get something better? But what are the Giants going to have to trade that you can't already acquire? Maybe you could go to wide receiver. I mean, that's a mess that needs to be cleaned up. Right? I mean, you had, DeMario Douglas, pretty good for a rookie, but the rumor was he couldn't get along with Bill Belichick. Can he get along better with Jared Mayo? That's going to be a huge thing. What about Devontae Parker? He got a contract extension before the season started last year. Then he ended up missing 4 games with injuries and really didn't play all that great. You got Juju Smith-Schuster. You paid him $25 million. But all he was pretty much known for this year was not being on the football field during the 2-minute drill in the opening game. He was benched the next game. And then a few games later, he ended up having a concussion, which obviously you can't help that, but still. Then you got Keyshawn Boot, which, by the way, he was arrested here not too long ago for potentially illegally gambling and computer fraud. So those allegations are hanging over his head. So he's probably the best wide receiver you've got, and you may not even have him going into next season depending on how things turn out. Now, I will say this, in credit of the New England Patriots, they've said, look, we're going to wait for the process to play out. We're not going to make any hasty decisions. We're going to see what the law ends up doing. And I applaud that. Innocent until proven guilty. Finally, somebody does it. So regardless, though, you have those allegations. Your wide receiving core doesn't look the best. Your offensive line, it really isn't that bad. You don't really have anybody at running back. I would say the defense isn't necessarily a problem. But your wide receiving core, you got to get figured out. You got to figure out your quarterback position. There's just a big mess to clean up in New England. You got the 3rd-round pick in the draft. If Jane Daniels is there, you got to take him. Yeah, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to take him. If you don't take him, everybody's going to look at you like you're bananas because you are. You don't go for Drake May. You don't go for Caleb Williams. You just don't do it. Jane Daniels was the best prospect 2 seasons ago, and I said that. 2 seasons ago. I implore you to go look at that offensive line play from the LSU Tigers. And all that anybody really needs to know about Jane Daniels is this one thing and this one thing right here. Bama didn't pull away until Jane Daniels got hurt. After that, they dominated that football game. But up until that moment, the Tigers were driving again, people. That's all you need to know about Jane Daniels. You think Bo Nix would have survived with that football team? Hell, he couldn't even do it when he was in Auburn. There's a reason why Bo Nix isn't high on anybody's draft board that's been talked about, people. Bo Nix, I'm telling you, man, Penix Jr., some of these other guys, they're just cuts better, man. They're just cut from a better cloth. I know a lot of people are 50-50 on J.J. McCarthy. I think he needs a perfect system. I think if this is 2018 and you think maybe you've got a couple of years with somebody and Tom Brady's maybe about to leave and you figure, well, there's probably only a couple of years left with Brady and you draft somebody like a J.J. McCarthy, I think that would be the right situation for New England. But I don't think that you have that flexibility. Look, I still believe that even though you draft Jane Daniels, I think you let him sit for a year. I know what C.J. Stroud did this season. I get that. But I still think it's going to be better for him to sit just at least one season. You don't have a very good quarterback situation right now with New England. You got Bailey Zappi, but still, I think whoever you draft, you let him sit. Because it's pretty obvious that they're going to go after a quarterback. And I don't think it really matters what quarterback. You know, people are talking about Caleb Williams and him not want to turn over his medical records and all that stuff and not do things for the combine. Look, it goes deeper than what people realize. There are people out there that have their personal beliefs about the combine. And that's okay. Look, the combine I could take or leave, to be honest with you. I really could. I could take it or leave it. But there are some people out there that believe it is nothing more than another farm system. Another trade system. There was a time when I thought it was necessary. I really don't think so anymore, to be honest with you. I could take it or leave it. There are people out there that 100% believe in it. Okay, fine, go for it. There are other people out there that don't. And why would Caleb Williams, he's got a lot of heat on him. He's got a lot of heat, but it comes with a lot of confidence. And if anybody thinks he's hiding something because he doesn't want to turn over his medical records, well, I hate to break it to everybody, but the NFL's the NFL. They're going to find out. I hope everybody realizes that. And HIPAA laws, either way, are still a thing, and it's okay to be protected under HIPAA laws. It's amazing that you and we want all these protections, but we don't want NFL players and college athletes and anybody else to have them. We think we're so damn entitled to the information that's literally none of our business. It's astounding to me.
For Riley, and that could be an intentional foul.
Oh, we don't want this.
Things escalate on both sides, both coaching staffs coming out to try to pull their players away.
I just want to apologize for what took place out here today. Sometimes when you play basketball, things get a little bit heated. I know it didn't come from an ugly place. It just came from a place of being competitors. We don't like the reaction. We will get better when handling situations like this. So I want to apologize for our South Carolina women's basketball team.
So that was Don Staley on what happened. Here's Coach Cam.
No one wants to be a part of that. No one wants to see that ugliness. But I can tell you this. I wish she would have pushed Angel Reese. Don't push a kid that you 6'8". Don't push somebody that little. That was uncalled for, in my opinion. No one wants to be.
There's that, and then here's Angel Reese after the fact.
we're not going to make that an excuse. We're not scared of South Carolina, and I'm going to repeat that. We're not scared of South Carolina, and a lot of people are scared of them, and we came in and battled to the end, and of course, we came up short, but we'll see them again, or whoever will see them again. But I'm just happy, and I'm going to acknowledge my teammates first, because Janae, Aaliyah, they came off the bench and did big things for us. Michaela, she was frustrated because she had to do minimum numbers and minimum time, but she came out there and did what she did, and she defended and she played as hard as she could. So being able to be proud of this team, I'm not going to give them all the credit because I know how hard we played. We played hard, we played tough, we did whatever it took to win, and sadly we came up short, but I'm happy where we are right now, and anybody seeing us moving forward should be scared.
Well, and there's Angel Reese on this situation, and anybody should be scared of them playing, going forward. They are the defending champs, by the way. Let's remember that LSU, they are the defending champions. And until somebody knocks them out of the NCAA tournament, that's the way that it is. That's first and foremost. Now, you can talk about the coaching differences all you want to and how they're approaching it afterwards, but this is Coach Kim, by the way, for the record. In case you don't know who Coach Kim is, she's been that person. Number one, she stood up for Angel Reese. She said that you guys are entitled to know things. You think you want to know things. You don't deserve to know everything. Angel Reese was gone for a couple of games this season. They handled it in-house. They dealt with it internally. And she said, look, we've taken care of business. She's not here for X amount of games. That's all you need to know, and that's all you're going to know. So there was that. She got ejected herself, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she's always been one to get after the refs. She doesn't play around. She's always stood up for her team. She did say, look, we don't want to be a part of that, but if we are going to be a part of that, here's the thing. Now, Cordorso and Angel Reese, for those who don't know, have a little bit of a history with each other, especially this season. A couple of months ago when they were playing against each other, Cordorso blocked a shot from Angel Reese, was mugging her down, John with her. And so then Angel Reese, that same game, turned around and blocked 2 shots of hers. It was mugging her down, John with her. Then in that game, early on, Cordorso had thrown an elbow at her, John with her, pushed her around a little bit. So Angel Reese got back at her, caught her with an elbow, kind of a Draymond Green type thing. Then she pulled her hair down. Then a couple of plays before that, they were getting after each other. And then, and I'm talking about Cordorso and the rest of the team, because at that point, Angel Reese was out of the game. And then when the ball got stolen from LSU, old girl grabbed some hair, and then one of the South Carolina teammates rolled by, tried to shoulder her, so then old girl pushed her off. And then after that, Cordorso came in and pushed her, and then from there, the bench is cleared. So really, when it all boils down to it, it was both teams. They were both jawing at each other. And folks, this is basketball. It's basketball. You can look at it either way you want to, but it is basketball. I've talked about things like this before with men's basketball where, look, man, guys get together. Sometimes things just happen. If you think that this isn't competitive, then you haven't been watching women's basketball. I'm just going to tell you right now. There was a lot on the line. A perfect season from South Carolina. Continued. Champions of the SEC. Seeding in the NCAA tournament. All that was on the line. Pride. And it goes to show how bad both teams really wanted to win that game. Now, South Carolina are the SEC champions. And at that point, once the ball was stolen, that was pretty much it. South Carolina sealed the deal at that point. By the way, a total of 6 players got ejected as a result of that play. And that's part of the thing that Dawn Staley had alluded to when she gave the rest of her speech about that situation. She was like, look, we got some players that are not going to be out here to celebrate with us. I know that it's bothering them. It is what it is. I don't really have a problem with it. Man, you're okay with violence? No, I'm okay with a little pushing, a little shoving. It's going to happen. It's sports, man. It happens on basketball courts every single day in this country. It happens in NBA and college practices damn near every single day in this country. It happens in the NBA all the time. It happens. It happens in football. It happens in baseball. It happens in softball. You guys act like nobody's supposed to ever get angry. I'm glad in your perfect little life you've never been pissed off enough at the job to, at least at the bare minimum, have a verbal altercation with somebody. I'm glad that you've all lived perfect little lives and you've never done anything wrong. You've never been upset with a spouse. You've never got into it with a girlfriend or boyfriend. You've never had an argument with a family member. We get it. You're perfect. Well, I'm not in the spotlight. Bro, these are 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. I'm so glad that at age 22, your little creme de la creme life was all mapped out in front of you. You had everything that you knew you wanted in life. You had all the direction in the world. You never lost your temper, not once. You're this even-headed person. Fine, bro. But you've also never been in that situation where it's all on the line, you're disappointed, and Angel Reese is feeling confident still. Look, you better be ready to see us because we're still here. We're still fighting. We're still ready. Then she gave props to the people that came in off of the bench and handled business, trying to keep them in that game. And all anybody wants to do is complain about Angel Reese. Well, you don't see Caitlin Clark acting like that. No, you're right. You see Caitlin Clark get nudged by a fan and then act like the world is coming to an end. She's a hell of a basketball player. But when she was taunting everybody else, boy, dish it out and not be able to take it. Notice she don't do that no more. The whole, you can't see me. She don't do that no more, does she? I love Caitlin Clark, don't get me wrong, but she learned a lesson. Angel Reese, and look, here's the thing. If anybody really watches Angel Reese, as long as you don't with her, she won't with you. But the minute you get started, she's ready. She wants to smoke. She's not scared. I love it. This is so good for women's basketball. The WNBA, the Aces just sold out because of this. Because there is a new group that is coming out of NCAA women's basketball that is completely different from anything that we have seen before. They are playing lights out basketball. They are setting records. They're getting double-doubles. Angel Reese would have led the country had she not missed a couple of games this season in double-doubles easily. Hell, what'd she play in? 23 games, and in 20 of them, she had double-doubles? She had played in every game this season? Oh, forget about it. Wouldn't have even been close. What did old girl at BYU have? What'd she have, 24, I think, 26? Led the country? Oh, yeah, no. Angel Reese would have easily touched that. This is good for women's basketball, guys. It's bringing a lot of attention. The WNBA is on a roll right now because of this. The Aces just sold out, like I said. And as I pointed out a couple of days on this program, let's not pretend that the NBA didn't go through something very similar. It took Magic and Larry and that rivalry with the Lakers and Celtics to bring the NBA back to where it is now. And if Jordan hadn't come along, it still might have fizzled out in the 90s. I'm just keeping it a buck. In the meantime, there are a number, and I mean, I have never seen so many fake-ass quotes from one person in my life. In fact, the latest one here is supposedly this. A fake quote, me and my father are in discussions with multiple networks like ESPN, Fox, about paying me residuals every time they use my likeness or highlights on their shows. If there's a buck to be made, we're getting it. Fake ass quote. And the person who posted it, by the way, has a blue check, which means that they either paid for it or were verified by Meta in some way or the other. And they even quoted and said, Caleb needs a dose of humble pie. Also, fire your daddy. He's going to prevent you from succeeding. And then, of course, you get all these people in the comment that are just saying all this nonsense. There's been stuff out there about supposedly him wanting ownership with a football team, which is illegal. And by the way, let's not forget that the players get revenue shares in the NFL, and I'm sure that Caleb Williams would be versed in this, considering the fact that him and his dad got, $10 million in NIL money, supposedly, while he was in college. Now, that's what ESPN reported on. Towards the beginning of the beginning to middle part of the year, he wasn't listed as making that much money, but that's what the end result ended up being while he was at USC. And in the NFL, the players, even though they can't own or have ownership within a football franchise because it's against the rules, they do get revenue shares. And what they get, 47, 48% a season ago from revenue shares from the media and television money and all that stuff. So that's per the CBA. So I don't know what other money out there they would need to collect, because he's going to get his money. Then he's going to – my thing is I want to be clear. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be that good in the NFL. I've said that whoever drafts him, whether it's the Bears or anybody else, they need to sit him for at least one season and let him get acclimated with the guys, acclimated with the team, get used to being in an NFL locker room. He needs time to adjust, to learn the playbooks, to study film. The best thing that the Kansas City Chiefs ever did was sit Patrick Mahomes. And again, I go back for the millionth time since right around 2016 when I first got into sports radio, and even then back in 2014, was John Elway and Bubby Brister. I talk about this over and over again. Denver ended up beating a rookie, Bubby Brister, in the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Steelers were up big in that game. The Broncos ended up coming back to win it. That game was at Mile High Stadium. It was a divisional playoff game, if I remember correctly. And at the end of that game, Bubby Brister, my dad had it on tape, and he was so flustered at the end of that game, and he's just yelling at guys to get down, and the crowd was so loud that the camera was shaking, and then he fumbled the football. He ends up going to Denver and being behind John Elway, and he said, look, I learned more from playing the game of football than I ever did as a starter being behind John Elway. Now, somebody's going to go, well, John Elway's an all-time great, which, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that. Secondly, I want to make it clear that Patrick Mahomes played a year behind Alex Smith. Alex Smith is a damn good quarterback, but he's not going to be in a Hall of Fame. That's all there is to that. That one season meant everything. Now, I understand C.J. Stroud did what he did this year, but it's an anomaly. And even then, he couldn't get it all the way done when all was said and done. He was getting away with a lot of passes, and it finally bit him, and it caught up to him in that game. But, in the playoffs, I should say, the point of what I'm saying is you need time. You're going to have to be very smart with how you do this. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't want to go to Chicago if I was him, but he believes he's the number one draft pick. He said he doesn't have a backup plan. What we do know is fact is that he's not sharing his medical records, and he didn't want to participate in the combine. And I can understand why he didn't want to participate in the combine. He was very clear. You have my game footage. What else do you need to see? What else does anybody need to see? It's not like you're not going to be able to call Lincoln Riley and go, yo, can we get some game film? And he's going to say, no, we're good. Of course he's going to share that. Of course he's going to want to establish that pipeline. Of course he's going to want to get that road to the NFL. Hey, look, next recruit at quarterback, our guy Caleb Williams is in the NFL right now. We've got a really good pipeline with the Chicago Bears. We've got a really good pipeline with such and such team. We're exchanging game film. We're having good conversations. They like what we have to offer and potentially in other players as well. You don't think that that's a thing? You have to think logically, I know that it's powerful the way that everybody words this stuff on social media to get your attention. They use these trigger words. I get that. But when you step back and you really think slowly about what's going on and you look at Caleb Williams, where is he wrong? And then you look at the bigger picture and talk about the pipeline and all that stuff getting established. That's even bigger. When all is said and done, you've got to understand that that is the bigger picture. And I really think that the fake quotes, first of all, I can't believe Facebook is not fact-checking this stuff. And then these people are writing it off as, well, it's just a meme, bro. No, it's not. You are presenting this as a fact. And see, and this is what happens when we talk about allegations with athletes. This is what happens when we talk about allegations with celebrities, fake quotes from celebrities and athletes. What's the big deal? The big deal is wait till it's you that's getting misquoted. It happens every day in my comment section. I swear people aren't even listening. They don't care. You get something in your mind, you get something in your head, and there's no getting rid of it. I don't understand it. Get all these people saying that they're rooting against him and calling him an idiot and all this stuff. He's not even saying these things. If you can show me where he said it, I'll recant. Now, somebody out there listening has got time on their hands and is going to be able to go and find it. I can't find 90% of these quotes that are out there. Because I guarantee you, if Caleb Williams said something like that, do you want to know how clickbaity that would be on ESPN, on Bleacher Report, on CBS Sports, on Fox Sports? That would literally be everywhere if he said anything to the effect of, we're creating NIL deals, which, by the way, it's pretty standard for players to do that stuff now, even at the professional level. That's why sometimes somebody couldn't be in a video game. You go back and you look at Tecmo Super Bowl. Remember when Joe Montana was with the Kansas City Chiefs and Tecmo Super Bowl just said Chiefs number 0 at quarterback? That was because Joe Montana had Joe Montana football. His name, image, and likeness rights were sold to somebody else for a video game. That's why Mike Tyson couldn't be in a video game for over 20-something years, because Nintendo had the exclusive name, image, and likeness rights over Mike Tyson. Do you know what it would cost for me to quote Michael Buffer on his Ready to Rumble thing? If I were to say all those words consecutively right now over this microphone, the FCC would be listening. They would then trigger that to Michael Buffer, who would then contact our boss and go, hey, bro, hope you got $1 million laying around, because that's what it just cost you to say those words consecutively like that. It's not uncommon. Is Michael Buffer an idiot? It's crazy to me that we're so willing to condemn somebody else, but not the other. And I'm so sick and damn tired of this picky and choosy, the fake quotes, the bad information. It's all just floating around out there. We thought the internet was supposed to make everybody smarter. Unfortunately, that's not how it went down. And I'll be honest with you, there are times when I think the internet is an experiment that we all failed. I'm just keeping it real. It just literally came across while we were at commercial break that T. Higgins has requested a trade from the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to be trying to fit that in a little bit later on. Obviously, tournament time right around the corner. A lot of conference tournament play is going to start today for men's basketball. A lot going on. It's a good time to be a sports fan right now. There's a lot to keep track of, a lot going on. In the meantime, speaking of college basketball, KU gets dusted by the Houston Cougars a couple of nights ago, over the weekend, I should say. Lost that game by 30. This is just something that I keep talking about with the KU Jayhawks this season. They are not an NCAA tournament-ready team. I don't understand why they're ranked in the top 25. I don't think that win over UConn holds any more merit. I really don't. Houston is the new number 1. They lost to KU earlier in the year. I said that I felt that they were going to avenge that loss. I wouldn't be surprised if KU got blown out. That's exactly what happened. Got mollywopped, as a matter of fact, from start to finish. I mean, that game was close for about the first 4 minutes, and after that, it was all Houston. What did they get up at one point, 32-9, and they just never looked back. Never looked back. Went on a couple of big runs early in that game. Look, KU is full of a lot of individual basketball players, but they don't play as a team. They really don't. They don't have any true dogs on that team. They don't have any guys that just have killer instinct. You talk to Houston, They just said, look, March 9th, man. March the 9th. That was circled on their calendar for a long time. And every game that they played in between time was not only them keeping themselves ready for KU, but it was literally just format for, we're ready for KU. Every time they played somebody, it was like they were seeing KU. That was the game that they wanted because they felt that they were better than that. They felt that they were better than KU. And at the time, that game held merit because KU had beaten UConn. That game with UConn no longer means anything. And KU was going to have to really show out in the Big 12 tournament in order to get a decent seed. I said a couple of, what was it, 4 or 5 days ago in the program that KU was probably going to be a 6 seed somewhere in there. If they can't perform well in the Big 12 tournament, because they don't get the bye week now. Houston does. KU still had a chance to be one of the top 4 in the Big 12, despite the fact that they have a losing record in Big 12 play this season, and they couldn't seal the deal. So I don't want KU fan to get on me and tell me that game didn't mean anything when it did. Now you don't get the bye week. Now you've got to play every single game of the tournament. If you end up winning the tournament, then maybe you get a 3 seed. But I don't see it. They could potentially be a 10 seed. And I'm not even kidding you. And the fact that they are ranked as high as they are in the country right now is simply because of the bias of the NCAA polls. Because there are teams out there that are sitting there with 24 and 25 wins, and they are not even in the top 25. Well, look at the conference, bro. This is basketball. This is not college football, and I'm going to need you to stop with that right now. Gonzaga has been in what conference for how many years? Do not pretend that Gonzaga's in an elite conference. I don't want to hear it. Chicago Loyola, the NCAA tournament is a completely different monster. And if KU doesn't watch it, they are going to be a 10 seed at best. Bill Self has a team with no guidance. He hasn't given them any guidance. He got ejected in a basketball game this season. And when I saw this happen, I thought to myself, well, it could be one of those things where the players watch him. They see how he's getting their back. He's taking some control. And I think maybe that was his way of trying to light a fire. Because Bill Self is one of the most boring personalities I've ever seen. I really have no idea why anybody would want to play for him. He's got no imagination, no creativity. I've interviewed Bill Self. He's a nice guy to talk to and everything, but he's just not, to me, he's at KU. He's at KU. And what about Hutchinson going over there from Michigan? I mean, what kind of look is this for him? Everybody created all these rumors about the type of money he was going to get and all that stuff over there with KU, and he was just like, look, guys, it was $281,000. I don't know why everybody, then he was just like, why is everybody jumping down my throat? If anybody could leave for a higher paying job right now, they would. He's right. But the way things have turned out for him have not been the greatest. And I keep saying, sure, he's going to get his numbers, but is he going to win? Well, that was one of the things I talked about when he was at Michigan. He got his numbers, but is he good enough to actually carry a team? Is he a Paul Pierce? Is he some of these guys that have gone through KU to actually get you to where you want to go? Now, granted, Paul Pierce didn't. To be fair, though, they were undefeated and they lost to the eventual champions. So it's kind of a how you choose to look at it thing. The reality of KU is they could very well be a 10 seed. Now, they'll probably be higher just because they're KU, but I just look and I see App State and I see all these other teams that are not even in the discussion that should be. I feel like this is on purpose with the NCAA trying to make it so that way they can expand this tournament to 80 teams or 90 teams, whatever the hell they're talking about. Ridiculous. Teams like App State that were at one point 22-5 this season should absolutely be getting their shot. You shouldn't have to win your conference tournament just to get in. To me, if you're the regular season champion in your conference, you have a damn good record, there's no reason to have a tournament, but it is what it is. because now you're taking a spot away from somebody who deserves it really over them. Just none of this makes sense. It's such a beauty pageant in college athletics, and it gets really, really tiring trying to explain to everybody how a lot of these things just need to go away. I don't care about your stupid traditions. Traditions die, they go away, they leave, things change for the better. What's so good about college basketball and college football right now? They're already discussing a 14-team playoff for 2026 in college football. Why? Because they want to make it an SEC invitational. That's why. You want to overrate all these power conferences, keep the money where the money is. You want to make teams that are, 25-5 win their conference tournament to get in, and then they don't get in because they have one bad game or one bad slip or one bad call by an official that changes everything, and you think that means that they shouldn't get a chance to get into the tournament. That's the most ridiculous ideology that I've ever heard. It doesn't make any damn sense. It's like the year that KU or Syracuse was undefeated, then they lost in the ACC tournament, dropped from a 1 seed to a 4 seed. Why? Explain it. Make it make sense. They lost one game. Or back then it was the Big East tournament, pardon me. One game. Stop acting like basketball on the East Coast isn't what football is in the South. Stop it. I think KU's a 10 seed. Unless they pull off a miracle in the Big 12 champion or Big 12 tournament. If there was no Big 12 tournament for basketball, I guarantee you they would have to be a 10 seed. The fact that they're ranked 14th right now in the country is a gift. It is a gift because they are not the 14th best team in the country right now, period. In the meantime, the Kansas City Chiefs signed Chris Jones to a 5-year extension. $95 million in guaranteed, $160 million total. Tell you what, the Kansas City Chiefs, this is the hazards of being a dynasty. This is the hazards of winning a Super Bowl. This is the hazards of any of that. And this is why winning in the NFL is so much more complicated than people think it is. It is literally a testament, a showing of how good Patrick Mahomes really is. No more Tyreek Hill, didn't matter. Middle of the road offensive line, even though it was greatly improved. A defense that was very solid, but now, the non-exclusive franchise tag that you gave to L'Jarius Sneed, right, a couple weeks ago. He's got permission to seek a trade. You got Patrick Mahomes. He's making $58 million this year. That's what he's due. The cap space is running dry. In fact, I think the Chiefs are over, if I'm not mistaken. You got an offensive lineman in Taylor who's going to be due $24 million this year. You got another offensive lineman in Thany who's going to be due $26 million this year. I mean, they're going to have to start restructuring somewhere. You're going to have to start making some cuts and sacrifices. What are you going to do to keep this team together? It's going to be complicated as hell. There is I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer with the Kansas City Chiefs right now. What I do know is that it is a really, really sticky situation. $5 million is what the Kansas City Chiefs are down to in cap space. $5 million. They are in the red. They are, man, I'm telling you what. If you're a Chiefs fan right now, what are you thinking? What do you need to do? Who are you going to restructure? Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to let go? If they release L'Jarius Sneed, if they would have done that before June the 1st, they would have saved $19 million. He's due $19.8 million this season. So they gave him permission to seek a trade, basically saying, we're going to go with our defensive line. Which, Chris Jones, he played great, don't get me wrong. And I said at the beginning of the year that losing to Detroit was probably the best thing that happened to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because if they would have won that football game, I don't know that they would have given Chris Jones that 1-year extension. I think they would have really been willing to wait it out and see what happens. Now, eventually they probably would have caved, but losing to Detroit, even without Travis Kelce in that game, it made him hit the panic button. And really, the defense didn't play bad without Chris Jones. They only gave up 14 points in that game to one of the more prolific offenses in the NFL this past season. They only gave up 14 points. It was the interception on the drop pass from Tony that ended up being the difference maker in that football game. The true difference maker. Well, then, of course, you had Andy Reid go for it on 4th and 26 from his, on 30-yard line. You had 3.5 minutes to go in that game, whatever it was. You had all 3 timeouts plus a 2-minute warning. I mean, punt the football and let your defense play this thing out. They've been playing great all the game. Why would you suddenly not trust them? That was a mind blower. So what do you do now? Well, you're probably going to have to let go of L'Jarius Sneed. There's nothing. You're not going to be able to keep him around. You're going to tell him that he's going to seek out a trade, and you're going to hope somebody else is willing to take on that contract. You may have to just say to hell with it, bite the bullet, and release him before June the 1st, just so that way you can release that money. At least with him, you don't have any dead cap space. But there are plenty of other players on that team that are giving you a lot of dead cap space. And with Patrick Mahomes still getting $58 million this year, it's going to be tough. Trying to keep that defense together is something, though, that I would have really focused on if I was Kansas City. Especially when Mike Evans was off the market. I probably would have been willing to sacrifice some defense to get Mike Evans. Because we already seen that an even mediocre defense, Patrick Mahomes, can carry you to the promised land. But without him, I'm focusing on that defense because they got you to where you wanted to go last season. When the year began, the average starter on that defense was 24 and a half years old, youngest in the NFL. But this is the hazards of winning. People start wanting more money. Their stats go up. Whether or not they succeed, whether they go somewhere else, that's kind of a thing, right? But the reality is just because somebody gets forgotten about doesn't mean that they're not playing well where they go somewhere else. It just means that they're not getting that recognition because the overall team is not that good. That's something that kind of gets lost in translation a lot of times. Would Chris Jones have gone somewhere else and played well? I don't know. It's taken him a while to be this good, to be honest with you. I really think that Kansas City's going to have to make some sacrifices, unfortunately. Didn't they just let go of McCole Hardman as well? And he just caught the game-winning pass in the Super Bowl. How you like them apples? But they're holding on to Tony for dear life. What did he have in the season? 13 drop passes? Somewhere he was leading the league at one point. I know that much. So what do you do? It's a tough one. Regardless, Chris Jones gets what he was looking for to begin with. I think they told him, just hold on, let's see how you do this season. Well, they won a Super Bowl thanks to that defense. You get to go and look at his numbers and go, well, he had a lot to do with it. But, without Sneed, I just don't think they were where they were going to be. You look at what Sneed did in the playoffs, and to me, he was just such a much more important piece of the puzzle. But then again, Chris Jones was all about that pass rush, and the pass defense is where the Kansas City Chiefs excelled this season. They weren't very good with their run defense, but man alive, that pass defense was pretty much untouchable. Go ask the Baltimore Ravens about that. Didn't have time to get to T. Higgins today. Very quick recap here. Caleb Williams, stop believing everything that you see on the internet. Baker Mayfield to the extension with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay. Don't forget about Rachaad White over there. What do you have, over 1,500 yards total this season? I mean, if Tampa Bay would have been a better football team, we might have been talking about him for MVP, to be honest with you. Chris Jones, 5 years, $95 million guaranteed, $160 million total. South Carolina, LSU, women's basketball, they get into it. Crazy situation over there. KU ends the season on the lowest of low. They get blown out by 30. Guys, obviously, we're going to be watching conference tournament play all week long, getting ready for Selection Sunday with March Madness. Your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that dial.